Some stories are nice and neat. This one isn't. Welcome to the Night Skald. I'm a teller of tales, a keeper of knowledge, a facilitator of facts and fiction mixed with embellishments and innuendo, a type of skald. Regardless of who said it first, I believe that truth is stranger than fiction. Yet, you should never let the truth get in the way of a good story. As the narrator of the Night Skald, you can refer to me as the Skald. Tonight's account is my own, a fitting and personal truth for the maiden episode. It stems from a distinct memory that began when I was 7 years old on a Saturday morning in 1976. There's never been a clear ending, at least not that I know of. I assume that the end will come with my own. I told this to my father near the end of his life. I knew he would understand. After my brother and I grew up, he became a pastor. His specialty was spiritual warfare. He saw what other people either deny or find so terrifying that they refuse to acknowledge. Subtle signs are often ignored until the big reveal. Before I begin, 3 claims. First, I'm a real person and narrate each story for the Night Skald. If you ever wondered why some channels sound monotone or consistently mispronounce heteronyms, that's an automated AI narration, often trained to mimic a specific voice. And just so you don't need to look it up, a heteronym is a word that shares spelling with another, but differs in pronunciation and meaning. For example, wind the clock versus the wind blows. Humans parse context. Many AI models still struggle, although they're continually improving. Second, you won't hear any gore on the Night Skald. These aren't 80s slasher flicks in audio form. Real-life strange moments tend to be ambiguous. I'll give you signs and signals. You decide what they mean. Finally, if you ever feel a slight tug at your ear, it may be literal or figurative. You may not be sure which. Either way, it can be shocking. I filed this telling under private ledgers, a Saturday morning, 1976. Provenance. In a way, this is a second-hand account from my younger self. What he saw, what he can never unsee. I haven't dramatized the core. Whether later events in life are related to the first morning is hard to say. I include them because they do rhyme, and because my father believed that rhymes matter. Part 1. The First Morning. It's pre-dawn on a Saturday morning in 1976. I am 7. Something or someone brushed my cheek and tugged my ear. Gentle, but definitive. I remember the sound of that small slide off the lobe, louder than it had a right to be. I was a heavy sleeper. I pulled the blanket over my head. That's the sort of bravery a 7-year-old has. Absolute faith in a cotton shield combined with a body insisting that it's not time to get up yet. I didn't stay under for long. Even with the blanket pulled high, I could tell dawn was creeping through the window and sliding across the floor. Half asleep, half awake, I remembered it was Saturday. No school, just cartoons and cereal until noon. For a Gen X kid, it didn't get any better. The Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Hour, and Scooby-Doo Where Are You?, the whole Hanna-Barbera parade, all visually consumed by inhaling frosty-coated sugar bombs, Alphabets, Kaboom, Cocoa Krispies, Sugar Smacks, Captain Crunch, Frosted Flakes, highly processed, vitamin fortified, with questionable food dyes to turn the milk colors. If that breakfast sounds unwise, keep in mind we would ride our bikes all afternoon without helmets or pads, build unstable bike ramps to jump like Evel Knievel, and return home around dark. Bad things still happened in the world, you just didn't hear about them, and the world kept turning for the unaffected. The realization that it was Saturday snapped me fully awake. I flipped the blanket down and sat up on the edge of the bed. They were standing there on the other side of the room. 3 of them. Today, I call them entities. Back then, I used simpler words. One was a woman, very old, dressed in black as if she had gathered the last scraps of night and tied them to herself like lace. I thought witch, because that's the word a 7-year-old has for a face that looks like it knows how to cast spells and maybe cook children. On the floor beside her was a hand. Not a glove, not a toy. A hand, palm down, with no arm attached. At the time, I had never heard of the Addams Family. Years later, when I saw reruns and discovered The Thing, I'd go very quiet, uneasy, even when it was meant to be funny. The third one flickered in and out, as if moving between rooms that shared the same space. It resembled an extremely thin man, but no human could be that thin. 2 long, stilt-like legs seemed to vanish into a narrow torso, but the proportions were all wrong. The legs were too long. He wore an old suit and a hat. Maybe it was a fedora. The only facial feature I recall is its eyes, coal black and depthless. They watched me. They didn't move. Neither did I. My breath and heartbeat were suddenly too loud in the quiet house. What was probably a few seconds felt like a long minute. I slid off the bed, sidestepped to the door without looking away. Then I ran down the hall to my parents' room. The door was locked. Saturdays were when they slept in. The bathroom between our rooms was open. I went in and stared into the mirror, half expecting them to appear behind me. I caught my breath, did what my body demanded, and decided to go downstairs. One problem. To reach the stairs, I had to go past my room. I wanted to be brave, but I knew I wasn't. I struggled with any type of confrontation as a boy, and I sure didn't want to confront this. I tiptoed to the doorway and peered in, ready to be relieved by an empty room and an overactive imagination. They were still there. The old woman turned her head. Her eyes found mine. The thin man's head turned slowly, as if he had to work to stay together. My younger brother slept through it all, mouth open, deep in the careless sleep of a child. His bed was near the door. I reached out to shake him. Nothing. Whispering his name, my mouth was dry. The word was a rasp. Still nothing. The disembodied hand did not move, and because it did not move, it was the most disturbing thing in the room. I ran downstairs and flipped on the television. I needed sound. Something louder than my breathing. The cartoons jabbered. After a while, the worry for my brother pulled me back. I gathered what little courage I could muster and crept up the stairs. I closed my eyes, stepped into the bedroom, and opened them. They were gone. Only the walk-in closet door stood open, like something had been late for an appointment and forgot to close it. We never left it open because bats sometimes found their way from the attic through a small gap in that closet. I shut the door fast. Shook my brother again. He woke. Annoyed and slow, but we went downstairs for cartoons and sugary milk. My great-grandfather had died earlier that year. He only had one hand. The other had been taken at a corn picker accident on the family farm decades before. There's a family story about the missing one, about where it was laid to rest. Only my grandfather knows the spot. I naturally lean towards logic and science, with an open mind for what we can't explain. I've always wondered if the hand might be his. I'm not proud to admit this, but I slept with a blanket pulled over my head for 14 years after that Saturday. No matter how hot it is, you'll sweat under a shield if you believe it keeps you safe. Part 2. The rhymes begin. What follows aren't news stories so much as repetitions with a different meter. Events that rhyme with that first morning. Age 21. The hand. Junior year, driving back to campus after a weekend at my parents' place. By then, I'd logged more seat time on a dirt oval than most people my age had on pavement. Snow stacked on the shoulders, roads mostly clear. Winter dusk was settling. My girlfriend played DJ, and we were singing the same song in 2 different keys. At the crest of a hill, the road became a blur of deer legs. An entire herd was crossing from left to right. Her hands flew to the dashboard. I eased the shifter into neutral so the tires would spin with the road and not against it. Pressure to the brake, but not a stab. Both hands gripped the wheel. It wanted to fishtail. I answered it without blinking. A quick left, right, a left, that felt like pure instinct. Then my left ear was hot. There was a third hand on the wheel at 12 o'clock. I didn't see it come. I only knew it was there. Steady, cool, exact. We bled speed as deer slipped past on either side. When we stopped, we were still in our lane. The hand was gone. My girlfriend stared at me. How'd you do that? I would have hit half of them. I touched both ears. The left was burning. The right was cold. A horn sounded from the opposite lane. A driver approaching, it stopped to let the deer cross. He rolled down his window and shook his head. Man, I've never seen anything like that. I shrugged my shoulders. Luck and quick reflexes, I guess. I put the car back in gear, a hand on my girlfriend's leg, and started down the road. I left my window down a tad to help cool my ear. Age 27. The old woman. Different house, different girlfriend. 2 young girls sharing a room, ages 4 and 6. All giggles, games, and whispers. Their ceiling lamp had a short pull string they couldn't reach. They used bedside lamps. On school mornings, I'd wake them before I left for work. 3 mornings running, I opened the door to find the ceiling light on. The first 2 times, I just pulled the string and kept the day moving. The third morning, I asked, "Who keeps turning this on?" They both pointed to the closet. I checked inside, half expecting to see a switch that I didn't know about. Just clothes, a plastic bin of toys, and an orderly row of shoes. So who's turning it on? I asked again. The old woman, the 4-year-old stated, matter-of-factly. She doesn't talk, the 6-year-old added. She's dressed in black with pretty lace. She turns the light on, looks at us, and walks back into the closet. I raised an eyebrow. I pulled the string, and the room fell back into the soft glow of the lamps. That evening, I installed a flip latch on the closet door, just as a test. I told the girls that they were safe, not to worry about the old woman. I told myself the same thing. I started checking the closet latch each night at bedtime, and on those nights, the ceiling lamp remained off. Age 36. The thin man. City garage after a winter performance of the Nutcracker. My wife, born in Russia, raised in Ukraine, walked arm in arm with me, still humming the Waltz of the Flowers as our footsteps traded echoes with the concrete. 3 men stepped out to block our path. The middle one asked for the time. I checked my watch, a wedding gift from my wife, and I told him the time. He raised a gun and demanded my watch and our money. The other 2 were split, 3 paces back, flanking the middleman. The kid who had been afraid of confrontation discovered a steady calm during any crisis as an adult. Honed my military service and years working at a college bar where fights were as common as the walk of shame hookups. I decided on the safest action, give him what he wanted and get my wife into the car. She kept her head down. Where she grew up, eye contact could turn a robbery into a beating. I reached for my wallet. The men's faces changed first. Their eyes went up, not at me, but above me, about 3 feet over my head. The gun hand lowered. The man on the left ran. The one on the right said, "What the hell is that?" and yanked the middleman backwards. The middleman's mouth gaped open, but nothing came out. Then they ran together, their footsteps disappearing further into the garage. I did not look behind me. I knew what I'd see. A tall, thin shape, a man with the outline of a ruler. In my mind, it wore an old suit and a hat. It had coal-black, lifeless eyes. My wife looked up when the man on the right shouted. I put my arm around her shoulders and steered her to the car without letting her turn. "What did you do?" she said, watching the men flee. "Nothing," I said. "Let's go before they come back." We were parked only a few spaces away. The engine fired and the tires squealed as I backed out, now facing the direction we had entered. There was nothing there, but I knew what had been there. Mind you, these are not proof. These are not testable and repeatable scientific hypotheses from statistics class. But the meter is uncanny. The hand that steadies, an old woman who gives light, a thin man who occupies space to induce terror with a look. Part 3. My father. I told my father about these events in his final days. Having spent half his life in a spiritual war, I knew that he had seen things that other people wouldn't believe. He had spent his share of nights in other people's homes, helping them fight other people's wars. Maybe he would have some parting words of advice. He listened like a man who had heard it all. When I was done, he took my hand in his, just as he had when I was a small boy and we needed to have a serious talk. Holding my hand kept me focused on him and his words. He asked only 2 questions. First, did you attempt to speak with any of them? No, I said, though I'm sure my actions and emotions told them something. Second, did you give any of them a name? No, I had only called them what a child does. Witch, hand, thin man. Basic descriptions, but unhelpful names that don't invite. He was quiet for a moment, slowly nodding. Good, he said, and the relief on his face was clear. Naming gives them a place in your mind and offers a bridge. Bridges are two-way. If they come again, acknowledge them only with your eyes and ask God to send them home. That was his way of saying, don't meddle with forces you don't understand, and appeal to the ultimate authority to take care of it. He died at peace with this world, ready for his journey into the next. Part 4. Guardians? Or something else? The witch, the hand, and the thin man, none has ever harmed me. And they've had my entire life to do it. But all 3 terrify me. The hand is the only one to take physical action to benefit me. The presence of the thin man causes action in others. The old woman brings light, and she watches. I doubt that she needs the light, so maybe it's meant for us to see her. I don't really know. The phrase guardian demons has entered my mind more than once. I would expect angels to look fairer and feel less foul. From a biblical point of view, angels are part of a hierarchy that reports up a chain of command through archangels and then to the ultimate power. What really scares me is not knowing their purpose and wondering who they report to. Are the 3 of them part of one being like an unholy trinity? Do each of them play a part and report to other beings? Perhaps the hand and the thin man are guardians of some sort, and the woman is a custodian who ensures the status quo is maintained. Maybe the real question is, why protect me from harm? Does something want me kept alive? Or maybe my death would result in some other negative consequence. I've heard of generational curses. What if this is the opposite? Maybe the entities, or those they report to own an ancestral debt, and guarding future generations is the payment. Regardless, there have been other days when I've felt the ear tug. It seemed to be a signal. Not yet. Not there. This way. Wait. Other days, when half a second earlier or later would have meant disaster, I passed through that space at the right moment. Then the world broke around where I should have been standing. None of the three entities have ever tried to communicate. Most people find silence to be awkward. Lack of speech is off-putting. But as for me, not every presence requires a conversation. Saying nothing comes naturally. If the night ever touches your ear, or one of your ears feels hot and the other cold, maybe your own guardian demon is trying to warn you of something. Sleep well. I'm the Skald, and this has been the Night Skald. If you enjoy this sort of content, you know what to do.